let's get on to, we're going to finish up with the bit from Novo, whatever the name of that network is, and let's get into this conversation with Mikey. Does anyone know, do you know, Chewie, what's happened to our old mate Jack Tame? Because he was off not too long ago with on paternity leave, but do we know? He's MIA. It's like he's getting to a point now because I want to go, is everything okay? Is he all right? Have we heard anything? Do we know? Someone in the chat will know. You know, they'll know. So Paul Goldsmith was on in the weekend. It was a lot to talk about, but I've really just stuck around the law and order part of the conversation. Mikey Sherman wants to know a little bit about what evidence this government is following that says harsher sentences on first responders will work, which I guess if they're going to work, what they're saying is fewer attacks on first responders, fewer attacks on anybody. Will harsher sentences work? That's where we start the conversation.
Yeah.
You're increasing sentencing, hoping it'll deter criminals. What evidence do you have to show that it'll work?
Well, look, there's a long-running debate about deterrence. The starting point is if you want to reduce the number of victims, you've got to deal with that very small group of New Zealanders that create the most victims. And that's why tougher sentences for them is important. It's why we have
but
three
what's
strikes.
The evidence behind it?
Well, the evidence is that if you're in jail, you can't create a new victim.
So he's literally echoing Ryan Bridges' point last week. Anyone who does anything outside of societal norms, if we lock them up, then the problem's solved, right? Now, I've got some research for you. You'll be surprised to hear, Chewie, that the actual opposite is true. And spending time inside actually causes you to be more of a problem in society.
Because you're in jail. So that's the clear message that we're wanting to send.
But the whole point of the policies is to deter people before they, do those offences, attack first responders.
And so the signal is that for first responders, there'd be an extra couple of years on a sentence, and for those assaults. And that's sending a message that, society, on behalf of society, these people go into danger, dangerous situations on behalf of society, and we want to be absolutely clear that they should be treated with respect and shouldn't be encountering violence. And if you do, not only are you going to suffer the normal consequences, you'll suffer more significant consequences.
The reason I ask about the evidence behind this policy is because if we look at the UK, who has similar laws, assaults on UK police, they were up last year. Ambulance staff experienced their highest ever rates of assaults.
It's funny, eh? Chewie, it's almost like they have these laws in the UK and they're not doing anything. And remember, this is the guy who last week, when he was on, I think, Breakfast Television, and was asked very clearly, will it make a difference in the moment? He said no. No. So they know this is not going to work. And what they're doing is the definition of gaslighting. If you look up the dictionary, the word gaslight will have a picture pointing to Paul Goldsmith, say, see him. Because they know it's not going to work. He said last week in an interview, it's not going to work, but creates the headline.
Tougher laws don't appear to have had any effect.
Well, the alternative of softer laws certainly doesn't work as well.
No, that's not the alternative. It's not either or.
It's so binary.
God.
It's so binary. Like, hard laws work and then the soft laws don't, because we've been saying that for years. So, like, if it's wrong, then that calls into question everything we've ever said. We can't have that. Can't have that.
And so, yes, no single thing. A sentencing law is not going to change everything overnight.
But you've got to have it be steeped in research and evidence.
What you've got to do is
Chewie.
Like, remember that time when we just killed lawbreakers and then crime went away, or the time when, like, in Victorian times when they had really harsh prisons of bread and water and cold, damp walls, and crime stopped then as well. And it's only when the hippies got in control of everything and said, well, maybe there's a reason people are the way that they are, and we should try and find out what that is, and then stop that happening. That's when crime came back in a big way.
Yeah.
And talking about people's feelings never changes anything. Never go to therapy. Never talk about your feelings, because it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Send a clear and consistent message. And so the clear and consistent message that we laboured under for a long period of time was, oh, don't worry, it's somebody else's fault that you whacked somebody over the head. It's something that's happened in the past, or it's we'll give a whole sort of culture of excuses around that. We're changing that message.
I'm sure Labor would disagree with that.
We're changing that message, and we're saying that there'll be real consequences, and people are personally accountable.
Seriously though, what?
There you go. So there is Mark 1 of this conversation, Chewie. Why are you going to? Is there evidence that harsher sentences on first responders will make a difference? Blah, 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 blah. It's quite important now. I'll tell you what I'm getting sick of on Twitter. Everything? No. I don't interact very often with people on Twitter. But occasionally when I'm putting up a new tweet, or I'm putting out my, a clip that we're doing or whatever, I see a tweet and it says things like, where's your evidence for this? And I want to be able to say to people, Google it, without wasting any of my time engaging a conversation. So all you need to do is Google, do harsher sentences cause a downturn in crime, or stop offending, or reduce offending? You can do this, crunchies. When you see a point, rather than go, actually just have a look around. I did that. No, Chewie wants to say something about it, but I'll show you some of the research I found shortly. Yes, Chewie.
But wouldn't it be amazing if those people that came at you and says, well, evidence, please, applied that same rigorous standard to the people on their team?
Yeah.
Like,
that'd be lovely.
Like, go on. Because that's what it is. None of this is backed up by facts. We have decades of evidence. We have studies going back years and years and years from societies reasonably similar to ours, not exactly the same. And it all shows that that doesn't work. Like, if you actually want to improve society, then harsher penalties don't do it. What harsher penalties do is they trigger that fucking punishment gland. The punishment gland that people have. They want to see bad people punished. That is just human nature. But you can't turn around and say, does this improve society? Like, there are always going to be people that say that the bad person should be taken away forever.
So here's my question that I put in Google. Does harsher punishment deter crime? And every single response it's all in there. You got to pick any one. So I just picked the first one. First one is
so many universities.
Yes. University of Sydney, I think it is. I'll just read you the synopsis of the research. You can look at the research yourself.
The myth of deterrence, straight away there. That's National's entire crime and punishment policy. The myth of deterrence.
Deterrence is sentencing's dirty secret, says UNSW law expert. One of those experts, Mr. Seymour, that you think's got some kind of syndrome. It's easy to think that the threat of punishment will simply dissuade someone from doing the wrong thing. But it turns out that deterring would-be criminals by instilling doubt or fear of the consequences is more tale than truth, TALE. Mm-hmm. Deterrence is largely an article of faith, says that makes sense. Luxon being a evangelical Christian, says UNSW Law Emeritus Professor David Brown. I call it sentencing's dirty secret because it is just assumed that there is deterrence. But what the research shows is that the system has little to no deterrent effect. The criminal justice researcher says harsher punishments, such as longer prison sentences, not only don't prevent crime, but may actually have the opposite effect. What research is increasingly showing is that imprisonment itself and punishment more generally is actually criminogenic. I'm going to go with criminogenic. It makes it more likely that people are going to re-offend, he says. Now, we can get into the research as to why that is. But when we have those terrible people on, like Tamoth Paul, who calls the Department of Corrections the Department of Connections, that's kind of the reason why. They go inside for longer, they get more connected, they come out better criminals, and they cause more trouble on the streets. So there is plenty of research out there, not just saying that it doesn't really work, but it actually makes the problem worse. And we're having all these people going, oh yeah, well if they're in prison, then they can't commit a crime on the street. Yeah, but probably 99.99% of prisoners come back out on the street, even if they've got a long sentence. And if they come out worse people due to having longer sentencing, then you're making it worse for future New Zealand. But then again, maybe that's the truth, Chewie, that this government doesn't think of the future. They only think of the here and now. And the here and now is, can we please get re-elected next year? Maybe.
Yeah.
Sir.
That's the problem that they're always trying to solve. They're talking about trying to improve New Zealand society. That is a lie. And you can prove that by looking at all of their words and actions, because none of it is for the betterment of society. It is for the betterment of their mates, for their donors, for their property portfolios, for their private prisons and private health care. That is the angle. Like, we know how to improve crime stats. We need to pour money, time, and knowledge into the communities that criminals come from.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody's born a criminal. So they have to learn it. If they have better opportunities than crime, then they will take those opportunities because they're people. If you lock someone up for a longer and longer term, A, it costs the taxpayers a lot more money. B, it breaks this person's life more and more and more the longer they're inside. Gives them less opportunities when they get out. And if you don't have any legitimate opportunities when you get out, well, guess what's always there for you? Your old friend crime. And the cycle repeats. And we'll get a left-leaning government that goes, this is bullshit, we need to break the wheel. And people will get fucking upset because their punishment gland is saying, I want to see more punishment. I don't care about what the University of Sydney says. I feel in my guts that someone's got to pay. And then the right-wing government gets in and they do this again and again and again and again.
The next clip, they're talking about the coward's punch law. I'm not going to play it because we're going to play the last clip, but I did want to highlight one thing. When challenged on how to know that it's a coward's punch law, a coward's punch, and what to do, and I've written this down, this is a quote. Goldsmith says this: if you do crazy stuff, and if you create victims and change people's lives through violent behavior, there are going to be tougher consequences. Now, all I wanted to say about that to Mr. Goldsmith and to this government is this: if you do crazy stuff, government, and you create victims and change people's lives, government, there are going to be tougher consequences. Now, I know there are going to be some people out there who consider what's happening in some areas to some beneficiaries and stuff violent, but if we even take that out off the table for now, this government is, quote, doing crazy stuff. This government is creating victims. This government is changing people's lives. Now all I want to know is what are the ongoing or the tougher consequences we're going to put on this government? Because they seem to be fulfilling the criteria that Mr. Goldsmith shared in this conversation about getting tough on crime. So if you're fulfilling the criteria, other than being violent, although I know there will be people out there saying there is violence happening because of their cuts and stuff, then what are your tougher consequences? Just going to put that out there and leave it out there for a bit. The last bit we're going to talk about, which is very good, and Chewie, it actually kind of speaks to something you've just said to do with crime and coming out of prison and welcome back to the old crime, is the shoplifting laws. Mikey Sherman does something very, very good here that embarrassingly I've heard no one else do. Because this moist bus ticket, he goes to the classic line of they're stealing to order. hang on. If they're stealing food to order, that means there's a community out there who can't afford the supermarket prices. What does that say about the economy and about those people? It was a very small point made, and I think it wasn't amplified enough, so we're amplifying it.
Why do you think people are shoplifting food?
Well,
from supermarkets?
a lot of the evidence that we've heard from police is a lot of it's organised. It's not just random people stealing because they're feeling
Specifically
hungry.
around stealing food from supermarkets.
It's stealing it to order, walking out with trolleyfuls of beef, and then it's going off and being sold. And so there's an organised crime element
it's
to
being
it.
sold.
Yes, and there's also...
So there's a black market for supermarket food.
Yes.
A black market for baked beans, Chewie. I wonder why that is.
And there's
what does that tell you?
Well, it tells us that some people don't like paying for things,
Does it
and the
also
rest of
tell you
society
that some people are
does pay
struggling
for
to pay for food,
and
therefore there's a black market because there's a need there?
You're just you're being a little bit reminiscent of Tamoth Paul, which is
I think that's a
What a lovely compliment, Mr. Goldsmith. Thank you, says Mikey.
market because there's a need there.
You're just you're being a little bit reminiscent of Tamoth Paul, which is
I think that's a lazy comparison.
the Greens.
Probably
the Greens,
one you already had in your pocket, but we digress.
I was amazed that the Greens decided to get into the shoplifting debate, but they did.
It's a genuine question, though, Minister.
But the point is,
because why would people steal? It's not like jewellery or electronics. It's food. People are stealing food. Why do you think they're doing that?
My answer to that is that a lot of New Zealanders right now are doing it tough. We're in a.
Sorry, did you just say the quiet bit out loud, Mr. Goldsmith? Because you're getting a bit too far away from blame Labor for doing it tough. You are aware of that. Are you aware of that,
Mr. Goldsmith about to announce increased funding for food banks?
I think so.
To remove a market for these steal to orders.
And maybe taking away those tax cuts from the top 5% and distributing that money to the bottom 5%.
I know what he could do. He could take some, just a little bit, the $400 million worth of excess profits that the supermarkets have got in the last 12 months. You can take some of that. But look, if there's people that want to buy fucking out of the back of my car fucking mints, and this, they know it's not legitimate. But at the moment, you go to the supermarket, a kilo of mints, which used to be an absolute staple for poor families, is $20. So someone's doing robberies.
Someone. But they're not getting
maybe
any time.
Maybe the robbers are robbing the robbers.
They're not getting any time for that.
Here.
All right, let's get
into
this.
This government can't conceive of the fact that if there is a black market, they can remove that black market by increasing funding for food banks or cracking down on the supermarkets, price gouging the fuck out of all of us.
Or funding beneficiaries so that they can live a meagre life rather than a desperate life.
A third
My
option.
answer to that is that a lot of New Zealanders right now are doing it tough. We're in a difficult economic period, but there is never any excuse for stealing, and there's never any excuse for expecting the rest of your fellow New Zealanders to foot the bill for your food.
And
we have a strong and
that agree
effective.
with that.
Hang on.
There's so much to unpack.
Did he just talk down the whole tax system? Did he? Because he just said it's for the rest of New. Well, is it okay for the rest of New Zealand to pay for these new helicopters coming? Like, hang on. If you've just said that it's never okay to take from the storehouse of money that all New Zealanders contribute to, whether it's tax or whether it's supermarket profits, it's not okay to take from that. You're a libertarian. All tax is theft. This is interesting. All right, we'll keep going.
Fellow New Zealanders to foot the bill for your food. And we have a strong and effective. We have a strong and effective welfare
I guess the
system in
question,
New Zealand.
Minister, if you allow me, is can people who are being forced to steal food pay for fines?
Well, they're not being forced to steal. Nobody's forced to steal food.
You think they want to be doing that?
Well, ultimately, we have a welfare system in this country, and people should obey the law, and that's the very clear and consistent.
We have a
message.
welfare system, do we?
Apparently. Yeah, are you wanting to add to it, or should we get to the last 30?
No, just pointing out this fucking fool doesn't know what he's talking about.
Minister, that the welfare system doesn't necessarily cover the cost of living.
Well, there's still no excuse for stealing, and so that's why we're sending a clear message at the moment. You've got to go through a whole court process for low-level shoplifting, and that's why we're bringing in an infringement regime like a speeding ticket, so that there are real consequences. Now, people need to pay their fines, and that is a big challenge that I've inherited, and the government's inherited. There's been a long-standing slackness when it comes to bringing in fines, and I've given very strong instructions to the Ministry of Justice to get cracking, and we're budgeting on getting more, and we're going to be quite ruthless in doing that.
Okay.
Again, the quiet bit out loud. We're budgeting on getting more. So Mr. Goldsmith needs money to pay landlords and tax rebates. So they're budgeting on getting more money coming in through their fine system. All of a sudden, Chewie, that treating your shoplifter like a parking ticket starts to make more sense because they need more revenue to pay for all their tax cuts.
There are so many right-wing ideals happening in countries like us around the world, democracies. And it's remarkable how quick they all fall apart. Like, we could solve crime, we could solve child poverty, we could remove a market, we could solve the black meat market for stolen meat. They have all the tools, and the only tool that they pull out of their bucket is a hammer for the poor. It's the only one. It's a remarkable lack of thought, of looking at ideas from the past that haven't worked, the ideas from other countries that haven't worked. But this time here, it'll work for us.
Yeah.
Like, we have been here before and none of this shit worked.
Well, it might be different this time, Joe. That's what they're saying. It won't be different this time, but that's what. And also, but hang on. But why it has worked in the past? It has worked to get parties elected and re-elected. That's where it's worked. Has it worked on the problem? No.
Is the New Zealand electorate a battered wife that just keeps coming back, going, "This time he'll treat me good"?
Yep.
Because it's bullshit. Why do we do this to ourselves? Why does the New Zealand electorate keep on voting for these guys that have not a new idea in the cupboard ever? Why do we vote for these guys that are like, just straight out of the gates, New Zealanders don't deserve nice things?